The rooftop door slammed open, and I froze, my lips still brushing against Mateo's, his breath warm against my cheek. My best friend Jake stood there, his silhouette stark against the fading New York sunset, eyes wide with shock. For a split second, I thought my world would collapse until I realized I wasn't afraid. Elliot Grayson, 25, had spent years dodging questions about his late-night disappearances, his vague excuses to Jake about needing space. Growing up in a small upstate town, he'd learned to bury parts of himself, parts that didn't fit the mold of the all-American kid who played soccer and fixed cars with his dad. But here, in the heart of Brooklyn, with Mateo's hand resting lightly on his knee, something shifted. The truth, raw and unfiltered, was out. Mateo Alvarez, 27, was everything Elliot wasn't: bold, unapologetic, a painter whose murals lit up the walls of Bushwick. They'd met 6 months ago at a community art fair, where Mateo's laughter, bright and unguarded, had pulled Elliot in like gravity. Their first kiss, under a flickering streetlight after a late-night diner run, had felt like breaking a chain. Now, on this rooftop garden, with fairy lights strung above and the city humming below, they'd been caught mid-act, mid-kiss, mid-truth. Jake didn't move. His broad shoulders, still in his construction crew jacket, blocked the doorway. "Elliot," he said, voice low, "what the hell is this?" His tone wasn't anger. Not exactly, but it carried the weight of betrayal. Jake, 26, had been Elliot's shadow since high school. Loyal, loud, the guy who'd punch anyone who looked at Elliot wrong. But he didn't know this Elliot. Not yet. Elliot started, but Mateo squeezed his hand. A silence. "Stay calm. Jake, this is Mateo. My boyfriend." The word felt foreign, like a stone in his mouth, but saying it aloud sent a rush through him. Mateo's lips curved into a small, proud smile. "Boyfriend?" Jake's brows shot up. He stepped forward, boots heavy on the wooden deck. The air thickened, the hum of distant traffic fading under the weight of the moment. "Since when?" "You never said." He cut himself off, running a hand through his buzzed hair. "You didn't trust me." Elliot's chest tightened. Trust wasn't the issue, or maybe it was. Growing up, he'd seen how people whispered about the queer kid at school, how his uncle stopped coming to family dinners after coming out. He'd built walls, not just around Jake, but around everyone. Mateo was the first to slip through. "It's not about trust," Elliot said, standing now, his voice steadier than he felt. "It's about me figuring out who I am." He glanced at Mateo, whose dark eyes held a quiet strength, urging him on. "I'm gay, Jake, and I'm with Mateo. That's the truth." Jake stared, his jaw tight, then turned his gaze to Mateo. "And you just let him hide this. For how long?" Mateo leaned forward, his voice calm but firm. 6 months. And he wasn't hiding from you. He was protecting himself. You know how it is out there." He gestured vaguely toward the city, where acceptance mingled uneasily with judgment. The silence stretched, heavy with unspoken questions. Jake's face softened, just a fraction, but enough for Elliot to notice. "You could have told me," Jake said finally, his voice quieter now. "I'm your best friend. Man, I thought we shared everything." Elliot swallowed hard. "I wanted to. I just didn't know how." He thought of the nights he'd spent awake, imagining this moment, dreading Jake's reaction. But standing here, with Mateo beside him, he felt a strange calm. No shame, no fear, just the weight of truth settling into place. Jake exhaled, long and slow, then gestured to the bench. "Sit. Both of you. I need a second to process this." He pulled up a chair from the corner of the rooftop, its metal legs scraping against the wood. The three of them sat, an awkward triangle under the fairy lights, as the city skyline glittered in the distance. Mateo broke the tension first. "You want a beer?" he asked, nodding toward the cooler by the potted plants. Jake snorted, a small crack in the wall between them. Yeah, he said. I'm gonna need one. As Mateo handed him a bottle, Elliot watched Jake's face, searching for clues. Was this acceptance? Or just a pause before judgment? He didn't know yet. But for the first time, he wasn't running from the answer. The next morning, Elliot woke to the buzz of his phone. A text from Jake, "Meet me at the diner. 10 a.m. We need to talk." No emojis. No jokes, just the bluntness Jake was known for. Elliot's stomach churned as he pulled on a hoodie and headed out. The Brooklyn streets alive with weekend noise. The diner, a greasy spoon called Mabel's, was their spot. They'd spent countless nights here, splitting fries and arguing over football. Now, as Elliot pushed open the door, the familiar smell of coffee and bacon hit him. But the air felt different. Jake was already in their usual booth, his hands wrapped around a mug, staring out the window. "Hey," Elliot said, sliding in across from him. Jake looked up, his expression unreadable. "Hey." He took a sip of coffee, then leaned back. "I didn't sleep much last night. Kept thinking about you and Mateo." The name sounded careful, like Jake was testing it out. "I'm not gonna lie. Man, it threw me. You've been my best friend for years, and I didn't see this coming." Elliot nodded, his throat tight. "I didn't either. For a long time. It's not like I woke up one day and knew. It's been a process." Jake's eyes narrowed slightly. "So, when did you know? Like, for sure?" Elliot hesitated, memories flickering. The first time he'd noticed a guy in college. The way his heart raced in a way it never had with girls. The years of pushing it down, telling himself it was a phase. Meeting Mateo, whose easy confidence had unraveled all his defenses. "Maybe a year ago," he admitted. "But I wasn't sure until Mateo. He made it real." Jake leaned forward, elbows on the table. "And you didn't think I could handle it? That I'd. What? Did you?" "No," Elliot said quickly. "It wasn't about you. It was about me. I was scared of what it meant. What people would think. You know how my family is." His dad, a mechanic with a temper, had never been shy about his views on certain lifestyles. Elliot had spent years dodging that judgment. Jake's face softened again, and he tapped his fingers on the mug. "Your dad's an asshole sometimes. But I'm not him. I just wish you'd told me sooner." "I know," Elliot said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I'm sorry." They sat in silence for a moment, the clatter of dishes and chatter of other patrons filling the space. Then Jake spoke again, his tone lighter. "So, Mateo, he's cool. Like, he treats you right." Elliot smiled, a warmth spreading through him. "Yeah, he's kind of amazing." Jake nodded, a small smirk tugging at his lips. "Good. 'Cause if he doesn't, I'll kick his ass." It was a joke, but there was a protectiveness in his tone that made Elliot's chest ache. As they left the diner, the weight of the night before felt lighter. Jake wasn't running. He wasn't judging. He was trying. And for now, that was enough. The weeks that followed were a tightrope walk. Elliot and Mateo's relationship deepened, their nights filled with long talks and quiet moments in Mateo's tiny apartment, where paint cans lined the walls and canvases leaned against every surface. But Jake's presence lingered like a shadow. He was trying. Elliot could see it in the way he asked about Mateo, the way he showed up to their usual hangouts with a forced casualness. But there was a tension, too, a question mark in Jake's glances that Elliot couldn't quite read. One evening, Mateo invited Jake to an art show in Williamsburg, where one of his murals was being unveiled. Elliot hesitated, unsure if Jake would feel out of place in Mateo's world of artists and activists. But Jake agreed, showing up in his usual jeans and work boots, looking like a fish out of water among the eclectic crowd. The mural was stunning, a vibrant explosion of color depicting a diverse group of people holding hands, their faces alive with hope. Mateo stood beside it, his curls catching the gallery lights, explaining the piece to a small group. Elliot watched from a distance, pride swelling in his chest. Jake stood beside him, arms crossed, taking it all in. "It's intense," Jake said finally, glancing at Elliot. "He's got talent. I'll give him that." Elliot nodded, sensing an opening. "It's more than talent. It's who he is. He puts his heart into everything." Jake's jaw tightened, and he looked away. "Yeah, I see that." There was a pause. Then he added, "You're different with him. Happier. Maybe." The words hit Elliot hard. A quiet acknowledgement that felt like a bridge being built. "I am," he said simply. But the bridge wasn't fully crossed. Later that night, as they grabbed beers at a dive bar, Jake's questions grew sharper. "So, what's the plan? You gonna tell your family? Your dad?" His tone wasn't accusing, but it carried an edge. Elliot's stomach twisted. He'd avoided thinking about his family, about the inevitable confrontation with his father. "Not yet," he admitted. "I'm not ready." Jake raised an eyebrow. "You can't hide forever. Man, you're out here living this life, and it's great. But what happens when they find out? You think they'll be cool with it?" Mateo, who'd been quiet, leaned forward. "He'll tell them when he's ready. It's not about hiding. It's about surviving." His voice was steady, but there was a fire in his eyes that made Jake lean back. "Fair," Jake said, raising his hands. I worry. Okay. I've seen how your dad gets." Elliot nodded, the weight of his father's expectations pressing down on him. He'd grown up under that shadow, always trying to be the son his dad wanted, tough, straight, predictable. Coming out to Jake had been hard enough. His family was a different beast. As they left the bar, Mateo slipped his hand into Elliot's, a small gesture that grounded him. "You don't have to do it alone," Mateo whispered. "I'm here." Elliot squeezed his hand, grateful but terrified. The truth was out with Jake, but the bigger battle loomed ahead. The call came a month later, unexpected and brutal. Elliot's mom, her voice trembling over the phone, said his dad had seen a photo on social media, candid shot of Elliot and Mateo at the art show, posted by a mutual friend. "He's furious. Elliot," she said. "He's coming to the city tomorrow. You need to talk to him." Elliot's heart sank. He'd planned to tell his family on his own terms, but now the choice was gone. Mateo, sitting beside him on the couch, sensed the shift. "What's wrong?" he asked, his hand resting on Elliot's shoulder. "My dad knows," Elliot said, his voice hollow. "He's coming here." Mateo's face hardened, but his touch stayed gentle. "We'll face him together." "Okay." Elliot nodded, but fear clawed at him. His dad, Tom Grayson, was a man of few words and strong opinions. A retired mechanic with hands like iron. He'd raised Elliot to be a man's man. The thought of facing him now, with Mateo by his side, felt like walking into a storm. The next day, Tom arrived at Elliot's apartment, his presence filling the small space like a thundercloud. He barely acknowledged Mateo, his eyes fixed on Elliot. "You got something to tell me?" he asked, his voice low and dangerous. Elliot stood tall, though his legs felt unsteady. "Yeah, I'm gay, Dad, and Mateo's my boyfriend." The silence was suffocating. Tom's face reddened, his fists clenching. "You think this is okay? Throwing away everything we taught you?" "It's not about throwing anything away," Elliot said, his voice shaking but resolute. "It's about being honest. This is who I am." Tom's gaze flicked to Mateo, who stood quietly by Elliot's side. "And you," he said, his tone dripping with disdain. "You're the one who did this to my son." Mateo didn't flinch. No one did anything to him. He's always been this way. He just needed time to say it. Tom scoffed, turning back to Elliot. You're confused. This isn't you. You're not. Like that. The words cut deep, but Elliot felt a spark of defiance. I'm not confused. I'm finally clear. And if you can't accept that, that's on you. Tom stormed out, leaving a heavy silence in his wake. Mateo pulled Elliot into a hug, and for the first time that day, Elliot let himself breathe. The fallout with Tom lingered like a bruise. Elliot went through his days in a fog, replaying the confrontation, wondering if he'd lost his father for good. Mateo was a steady presence, cooking dinners and dragging Elliot to art galleries to distract him. But the weight of rejection was heavy. Jake, surprisingly, became an anchor. He started joining them more often, showing up at Mateo's apartment with takeout or inviting them to watch games at his place. One night, as they sat on Jake's couch, beers in hand, he brought up Tom. He'll come around, Jake said, his voice firm. He's stubborn, but he loves you. Give it time. Elliot wanted to believe him, but doubt gnawed at him. What if he doesn't? Then you've got us, Mateo said, his hand resting on Elliot's knee. Family isn't just blood. It's the people who show up. Jake nodded, a rare softness in his eyes. He's right. I was pissed you didn't tell me sooner. But I get it now. And I'm not going anywhere. The words were a lifeline, pulling Elliot back from the edge. He looked at Jake, then at Mateo, and felt a flicker of hope. Maybe he could build a life where he didn't have to hide. But the world outside wasn't as kind. At work, a coworker spotted Elliot and Mateo holding hands on the street and whispered about it to others. The looks started subtle, but unmistakable. Elliot, who worked as a graphic designer at a small firm, noticed the shift in how his boss spoke to him, the assignments that suddenly went to others. He didn't say anything. Not yet. But the pressure was building. One night, at a queer community event Mateo dragged him to, Elliot saw a different side of the fight. The room was filled with people young, old, trans, non-binary, gay, straight allies, all sharing stories of struggle and triumph. A trans woman named Lila, 30, with a sharp wit and a warm laugh, spoke about losing her family but finding a new one in the community. Her words hit Elliot hard, echoing Mateo's from weeks before. After the event, Elliot and Mateo walked home through the chilly November streets, their breath visible in the air. I want to be like that, Elliot said suddenly. Like Lila. Strong. Out. Not afraid. Mateo stopped, turning to face him. You already are. You faced Jake. You faced your dad. You're stronger than you think. Elliot kissed him then, under a streetlight, not caring who saw. For the first time, he felt like he was claiming his place in the world. The holidays loomed, and with them, the question of family. Elliot's mom called, her voice softer now, asking him to come home for Christmas. Your dad's still processing, she said, but he misses you. We both do. Elliot wasn't sure he was ready to face Tom again, but Mateo encouraged him. You don't have to forgive him yet, he said, but showing up is a start. For you, not for him. Jake offered to come along, a gesture that surprised Elliot. Moral support, Jake said with a shrug. Plus, your mom's cooking is killer. So they went, Elliot, Mateo, and Jake driving upstate to the small house where Elliot had grown up. The air was thick with tension as they sat around the dining table, Tom's silence louder than any words. But then, halfway through dinner, Tom spoke. I don't understand it, he said, looking at Elliot. But you're my son. That hasn't changed. It wasn't acceptance. Not fully, but it was a crack in the wall. Elliot nodded, his throat too tight to speak. Mateo reached for his hand under the table, and Jake, across from them, gave a small nod of approval. Back in the city, life settled into a new rhythm. Elliot started speaking up at work, calling out the subtle slights. He and Mateo joined a local queer advocacy group, finding strength in community. Jake, ever loyal, showed up to their events, asking questions and learning, his presence a quiet testament to their friendship. But challenges remained. One night, as Elliot and Mateo walked home from a movie, a group of guys shouted slurs from across the street. Mateo tensed, ready to respond, but Elliot pulled him away. "Not worth it," he said, though his heart raced with anger and fear. Later, in the safety of Mateo's apartment, Elliot broke down. "I thought I was past this," he said, tears in his eyes. "I thought I was strong enough." Mateo held him, his voice steady. "You are. Being strong doesn't mean you don't feel it. It means you keep going." Spring brought change. Elliot's firm, under pressure from a new diversity initiative, promoted him to lead designer. He and Mateo moved in together, their apartment a mix of Elliot's minimalist style and Mateo's chaotic creativity. Jake, now a regular at their place, even helped paint the walls, joking about how he was basically their third wheel. Tom called more often, his conversations awkward but earnest. He asked about Mateo, about their life, and though he stumbled over words, Elliot could hear the effort. His mom sent care packages, including recipes she'd tweaked for Mateo's vegetarian diet. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. One evening, at a community event celebrating Pride, Elliot took the stage. He'd been nervous, but Mateo and Jake stood in the crowd, cheering him on. "I used to think being myself was a risk," he said, his voice steady. "But the real risk is hiding who you are. I'm here because of the people who showed up for Mimi boyfriend, my best friend. This community. They taught me that love, real love, is fearless." The crowd applauded, and Mateo's eyes shone with pride. Jake, grinning, gave him a playful shove. "You're a sap, Grayson." As they walked home, the city alive with pride flags and laughter, Elliot felt whole. He'd faced his fears, Jake's shock, his father's anger, the world's judgment, and come out stronger. Mateo's hand in his was a reminder of what he'd gained, not just love, but the courage to live it out loud. In the end, it wasn't about being unafraid. It was about choosing to move forward, even when fear whispered to stop. And with Mateo by his side, Jake at his back, and a community that held him up, Elliot knew he could face anything.